Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm glad your work schedule changed. I love having you here at the beginning. Would you do roll call of the board, please?
Supervisor Milky,
Here?
Treasurer Rice,
Here.
Trustee Bills,
Here.
Trustee Brown,
Here.
Trustee Smith,
Here.
Trustee Theron,
Here.
and Clerk Cody here. Everybody's here.
All present and accounted for.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
We have a motion by Bills, support by Cody to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion to approve the agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 5 on our agenda presentations, and I'm honored to welcome Jim McBride from Middle Michigan Development Corporation. And I had the honor of, on the EDA board, you did the presentation probably a month and a half or 2 months ago. And so the floor is yours.
Thank you much. Thank you so much, Brian. Appreciate it. You all should all have a copy of our 2022 annual report. I'm not going to go over every page, but I just want to hit a few highlights. You open it up on page 2. We like to talk about the local impact over the past year. We did 161 company visits in 2022. Company assists were 135. Over $45 million was invested in our local economy by the companies we called on. So just the companies we called on. And also as we were coming out of COVID, 744 new hires. Grant funding in 2022 alone was 1.2 million. The tail end of the COVID grants, but if you look back over the period of 2020, 21, and 22, we received over $6 million from the state to provide for businesses in the area. So it was a pretty big impact. Flip over to the next page, and I kind of like this illustration on page 3 because it kind of goes to the issue that a lot of people who don't, not that involved with economic development, think of it usually as attraction or entrepreneurialism. That is a big part of it, but it's not all there is. And there's retention and expansion, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute with in regards to one particular company. There's community development. There's also talent, attraction, and retention, which has become a much bigger factor than we ever dreamed. I think the whole idea that local economic development organizations are going to have to get involved with talent was a foreign concept 10 years ago, but it's starting to come in, and as we've reached a point where we now have statewide 7 applicants for every 10 job openings, 7 applicants for every 10 job openings. We've got a talent issue here in the state, a major one. We don't have enough people to fill all the openings that we currently have. So, and there are various things that we're trying to do that I'll talk about in a minute. But just so you can kind of get an idea that we touch all of these areas, and depending on what the need is, we may have to adjust year to year. Okay, this year we're going to concentrate a little more on this year we're going to concentrate a little more on that. And one of the things that has come on really strong in recent months is that MISTA has reached out to us and asked us to partner with them on housing, because we're finding that one of the issues that we have with attracting talent is in many of our communities are not homes that are available or not much on the market, and sometimes a home comes on the market and you have a bidding war between various buyers, and they'll be willing to pay over the asking price, and we're seeing that even locally here. So, so this is a problem, and it seems to be even a worse problem in some of the rural parts of our state. So even working for talent, we've got to probably get a little bit involved with helping MISTA line up, some housing projects. And when people associate MISTA often with lower income housing. Well, they also do market rate housing, and they have a lot of additional money from the feds right now, and a lot of their emphasis is going to be on market rate housing projects. So that's, something that, again, we may be a little more involved in than we have been in the past. Our mission and vision are on page 4, and we just updated that last year in December. So this is for the next 3 years. We'd like to take a look at this every 3 years and make sure that our mission and vision is up to date. A mission: we grow the economy with service designed to retain, expand, and attract businesses in Clare, Gladwin, Isabella, and Osceola counties. You might notice 2 new counties have been added. To foster economic vitality and resilience in our region. The vision: as a primary economic development driver for businesses, communities, and industrial partners, we champion prosperity and vibrancy for Middle Michigan. So that's just kind of who we are and what we do. Flip over page 5 and 6, just a little bit of we like to have businesses in focus, and last year for a couple of years we've had Bandit featured. This year Highland Plastics and Shepherd. And then if you skip over to let's skip ahead to pages 11 and 12. So I mentioned that talent, and like what can we do to help with talent retention. Isn't that the job of Michigan Works? Well, yes and no. Michigan Works, that is a big part of what they do. But a program that's kind of been unique that we pioneered with Saginaw Future back in 2018 and 2019. 2018, we partnered with them and had an event at Saginaw Valley State. And then in 2019, we had one here in Mount Pleasant. And the whole idea was to link it with homecoming. So the day before homecoming, we would have an event and advertise it to alumni lists. So alumni coming back for homecoming, and try to get them to come to our event and have a mixer with this last year we did it at 23 companies that were looking to hire people. But then we also found that graduating seniors in the engineering department and the business school were very much in demand, so we were able to recruit a number of those as well. And so it was very successful events in 2018 and 19. Then we ran into COVID. We had to shut that down. We couldn't do an in-person event. Came back in 2022 last year, and we had outgrown Mountain Town Station where we had the first one, and we were at the Courtyard Marriott. We had 23 companies there, and this was for all 8 counties in Region 5. We were the host, but heavy emphasis on this local area. We had companies there, and at the time we did it, we were hearing from Michigan Works that they were having a hard time getting 1 or 2 people to show up at a job fair. We had 70 people that were looking for jobs. They were either graduating seniors from Central, or graduating from Mid, or graduating from Alma College, and they were looking for jobs, and we made a lot of connections with local employers. So you're going to see us do more of this type of thing as we go forward, just trying to think outside the box, trying to keep our young people here, trying to change the narrative, trying to change the mentality, because, and I'll be honest, and we talked with President Davies about this when we first started working on this. The thing was that the understanding was that, well, students come here, we teach them, we train them, we get them ready to graduate, we graduated, and we send them out. We send them out. And we're trying to stop that send them out part of the narrative and say we're trying to keep some of them here. We need that talent here locally. We want to keep our high school kids here too. So we're just getting started with this type of thing, and this is not something that Michigan Works does. So this year we have some additional funding from the state. So we're going to do one in Mount Pleasant on Homecoming Eve, again at the Courtyard Marriott. And then Saginaw is going to do their own over at Saginaw Valley. So we're doing 2 of them in the region. And we think that they're both going to go great, because this last one was great. Flip over to pages 13 and 14. So a training grant. So one of the things, and Mark, who's on the board, he's heard this probably 4 or 5 times, that's me talking about this particular grant, RTIG, Regional Talent Innovation Grant, that we're doing with the state. And where we took housing money, the state thought this was a novel concept, money that came from HUD, Community Development Block Grant dollars. So it came from HUD, and this was made available to us to morph into a job training program. Well, the thing was, since we're using this particular funding source, they require that anybody trained has to have a copy of their 1040, has to have a copy of their W-2, and photocopies of both sides of their driver's license to participate in the training. And on top of that, we had to make sure that 51% was low to moderate income. So we went out and marketed this, and we went to your typical company in the area. Bandit signed up for it right away. There's a good example. And but as we, got the people to be trained, enrolled in the program, we found, first of all, it was difficult. We had to explain why we needed all that paperwork. Comments like, "Oh, I feel like I'm filling out a form for a mortgage here," and the company told me I had to do the training, and now I got to. So we had to overcome all that, and we did. But then we found that we had an 80-20 split, so 80% on average of the people being trained were above that low to moderate income, and 20% below. Well, we had to get up to 51% and figure out how to do it. So we reached a point where we had to cut off people over and then start really hustling and finding people that were below that level that we could train. One of the things we found, and this is the Union Township company, is Mid-Michigan Industries. And so we right now we have 23 people signed up and more on the way for a one-day leadership training program. And talking with the leadership out there at MMI, they said, we'd love to have a one-day training for many of our employees, that they really need to develop those skills. So we're providing that training under this program. We're getting the paperwork in little by little, and we're going to be scheduling those trainings here in the month of July. So this is hit at Union Township company here, that they're getting 23 and counting people trained, and that's over 10% of the goal, but we're going to go way beyond the goal. And I'm also going to go, as Marcus heard me say, I'm going to go over 51% because I know that there's a federal audit next year of this program, and I just want to make sure that there's a significant cushion, that we have enough people that no matter what, we're well qualified for this. So, but we've learned a lot. This was a very complicated program, and I think any other grant program after this is going to be easy by comparison. To my entire staff and team, we've all been stretched on this one, but success is right. We're right there. As of today, we're at 52.2%, so we already hit that 51, and we're going to go beyond it, like I said. Our partners, again, Delta College, Mid-Michigan College, and it's been a great program. Next couple pages, 15, you can see kind of our history that Middle Michigan was started by George Dunn and local leaders back in 1981. He retired in 2010. I came in 2015, so it was Brian Anderson was in between us. Claire was picked up as part of the organization in 1999, and then 2 counties approached us last year. They approached us. We didn't approach them. Would you guys like to be, cover us under contract for economic development? And so we negotiated with both of them, and we said yes. And so we now have Osceola County and Gladwin County, and we're looking at our staffing and making sure that we've got adequate coverage to cover everything else. But so we have been growing, and so we're real pleased with that. Next couple pages, some of our partners. Great photo there with the head of the MEDC, Quentin Messer, standing beside me in the photo there. Katie Mora, for those of you who haven't worked with her, she's great. She's right next to me. She's the vice president, and some of the other staff that we have here. And just some of the comments from Liz Conway, from Greg Lamar over at Saginaw Future, Casey Zenner down at Greater Gratiot, people that we work with a lot, Tony Fox at the SBDC. These are our partners that we work with every day for economic development in the area. So we're not a go-it-alone group. We partner with everybody that's in this field. If you skip back over to 22, 23, the inside cover, just a few things that I'd like to remind people. So we are not funded by the state. We did get an admin for our RTIG grant, but when you hear us doing Match on Main or all these other grants, we don't get admin for that. So we have to raise our money locally, and our sponsors, that you see there, that list is responsible for about 30% of our revenue, and our partners about 70% of our revenue, and of course Union Township is there. And without you guys, we wouldn't function. I mean, let's be honest. So we would not be able to function. So we depend on your support. You can see our executive committee there, and Mark is a member at large of our executive committee. Our chair is Jerome Schwinn, Marita Haddam-Schiffman, who's president of My Michigan Health for Alma, Mount Pleasant, and Claire. She's our vice chair. Jody Thompson from Bandit is our secretary, and Jeremy Howard is our treasurer, city manager at Claire. And we have Rhino also from Cops and Donuts, Greg Reinerson, great friend, and Rick Bars is also on the executive committee with me. And then all of our other board members are below there on the list. So that's just a little bit, but I did say that I was going to come back and talk a little bit about the one company. This is a great success story. So I think everybody here knows Bandit, and you know that they've been around a long time. They were started in 1983 by Mike and Diane Morey. When I first came here in 2015, they were a little over 300 employees. On April 5th of this year, they were at 770 employees at their main location in Broomfield Township, with 100 openings, 100 job openings, that they would hire those people if they could find the people. Their campus is 560,000 square feet in Broomfield Township. So if you've driven through there, you know, you can see. Well, they announced on April 5th that they are expanding into Union Township. They purchased all the remaining facilities from Birch Tank. That's on Enterprise Drive over by Home Depot. And they're going to expand the manufacturing facility there, a $14 million expansion. They're going to hire an additional 200 people, and the expansion will be another 38,000 square feet of industrial space. So they're going to be building chippers in Union Township, and also having a display area where people can see all their product without having to drive out, you know, to Broomfield Township. So it's going to be great. And you're right off the expressway loop there. So we're very happy with that. I was asked to be the master of ceremonies. I will be coming in, just, you know, fair warning, that they've requested a property tax abatement for just the new expansion. So we'll be, I'm working with Rodney, we'll be coming in on that down the road. But, you know, what a great story that they're expanding, and they're expanding in Union Township, and you know, it's a great thing. And you know, you think about, well, what if, you know, you could bring in an attraction project with 200 jobs? Well, these people are local, you know, and they're also an ESOP, in other words, employee stock ownership program. So the employees own the company now. The employees do. And they have the regular board and the leadership and everything, but it's an employee stock ownership program. They're not going anywhere, and they're expanding with 200 extra jobs in Union Township. So it's a great success story, and we're so happy to work with them. A couple other things real quick, or one other thing. We just got notified on Monday of this week. We had worked with, Katie had worked with Rodney on a rural readiness funding grant through MDAR, Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And this would be for expanding your opportunities here in the township for industrial space. And that's needed, because right now, if I had a big project that I could maybe land, I don't have anywhere to put them because all of our industrial parks are full. So this would be a grant that would, if we get it, would come from MDARD. We were told Monday, you know, we passed through the first level, which means, okay, looks good. You know, we were going to ask you to submit a more, you know, formal grant request. So we're working on that right now. That's due July 7th. And so, yeah, we're very excited about that. I'm not going to guarantee we'll get it. You can't ever know on something like this, but we do have a pretty good feeling that we've got a good shot. So that would be another opportunity. So with that, if there's any questions.
I'm excited that Bandit wants to make chippers in Union Township.
I
I know they're
love that.
8,000 pieces behind.
I know.
That's
They're
what
on
I
a
heard recently.
waiting list. It's a waiting list to
Yeah,
order.
it's like 4 years or something.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. Hearing it a second time, I was still, it's great, so.
I'm so proud of you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
you very much.
Have a great day.
Let's see, no public hearings tonight. That'll take us to item 7 on the agenda, public comment. Public comment is restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record.
I only have Rodney on here, but he's given his presentation,
Okay,
so.
so we have no one connected virtually and seeing no one else. Let's see, let me open up public comment first. We'll open up public comment at 7:21 PM. Again, seeing no one connected virtually and no one here in person, we'll close public comment at 7:21 PM. So that takes us to report boards and comments. Just real quick, on the ZBA, I put out a good feeler today. I got a feeling maybe we'll get an applicant for the ZBA, we'll see. But as a reminder, really have 2 seats we'd like to fill there. And sidewalks.
Yep.
Anything else on that? June monthly activity report. Anything, anyone? Planning Commission, we'll move to with our director. This, I'm liking this. Our director will connect remotely. Mr. Stuhldreher, do you have anything that you need to add for Mr. Rodney? Mr. Rodney, you have the floor.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here this evening. We'll start with information about our EDA board meeting. Our EDA board met June the 20th. They had a fairly busy agenda. We received a presentation on the annual report for 2022 activities. It's a report that we put together by with the State Act, Public Act 57, that governs the DDA activity. The report is on our website. It just lays out the current contracts, the projects that are going on in each of the DDA districts, the various promotions and accomplishments that have taken place in 2022. The DDA board also considered and took action on a request for a budget amendment and for appropriation to funding to do the digital scanning of various DDA district files that are in our basement, all the historical files, similar to what the Board of Trustees did a few weeks ago. They did approve that request, and so we will be working on that digitization project this year, along with the building and construction files that the Board of Trustees approved. And then the third item, action item on their list was approving the participation agreement for East DDA district funding that's going towards the pump station number 1 project that's going on over on Enterprise Drive right now. As I said, it was a fairly busy agenda for the DDA board. The Planning Commission also met on the 20th. They were focused entirely on the master plan update. This the benefit of a quiet agenda otherwise, so they spent the time working on assembling and updating a framework for updating the master plan. The idea is we're looking at kind of creating the skeleton of what the priorities should be for updating the master plan. And so they were looking at kind of 2 elements. One was a series of policy areas or priorities that had been identified in our previous discussions. We're going to finally summarize those and we'll give whether we have those staff to summarize those correctly. In addition, the Planning Commission is looking actually at the current master plan and the policies and priorities that were noted in that plan to identify those that should be carried forward and others that perhaps that are not needed or should be changed in some way. So that process will be continuing in July. The end result of that, as I said, is intended to be what amounts to a skeleton the master plan that will flesh out from there. There will be a ZBA meeting in June, but we are expecting a Board of Appeals meeting in July. It's scheduled for July 11th. We have an item on the agenda there related to application of the zoning ordinance requirements to a land division application, where we had an appeal associated with that. The Sidewalk and Pathways Committee has not met, but with Ballard Park, you can see the start of the work that's going on, both for our outdoor fitness court. You can see the pad has been dug out over there, and they'll be actually doing paving work for our concrete pad for the outdoor fitness court later this week. And then the Isabel Corporation, which is doing that work, will also be putting in the sidewalk that's going to come from McDonald Park around and in front of here at the Township Hall, and also working on another sidewalk project on the east side of the township. So busy month overall, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Where are you? It's beautiful there. I love your background.
I would love to say that I'm there. I was actually there just a couple of hours ago. I went for a walk after work over at Chippewassee Park. So this is down near the river, Chippewassee Park.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Thank
I
you.
have no questions. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
report. Moving on, board member reports. Trustee Thering.
Good.
Clerk Cody.
I don't have anything to report.
Treasurer Rice. I know you got something today.
Yes, taxes are done and are going to be in mailboxes or at the post office on the 30th. So, be expecting those.
Trustee Smith.
None tonight.
Trustee Bills.
Yes, I attended a Isabella County Board of Commissioners meeting on June 20th, and it was very interesting. I didn't know anything about this project, but apparently they've been working with Johnson Controls to do a huge solar project, which is going to cost around $7 million. And it's going to cover the rooftops of their buildings and cover 95% of their electricity needs. And they're going to save $126,000 a month on electricity with credits from the federal government because of the Inflation Reduction Act of 30 to 70% of the cost. So I got really excited about that and started thinking, my God, we should do that here too. So I talked to Administrator Frost after the meeting, and she said, yeah, it's not too late to apply. So I didn't know if that was something we wanted to look into for some, yes,
So is that all their municipal buildings then that you're
Yes.
referring to? Oh, awesome.
yes.
I hadn't heard about that either.
Yeah, so, Johnson Controls came for the presentation, and boy, that was sweet. I mean, it sounds really cool. And they guarantee the savings. So if it doesn't amount to that, they will eat it. So, I mean, it's pretty cool. I just thought that was really, really cool. In addition, they approved a new communication system for the where the county, city, and tribal police all can access the same complaints, which I know we have heard about over the time and everything, but that was it. And then they had a presentation from Region 7 Area Agency on Aging Director Bob Brown, and he urged everyone to call their congressperson for 3B funding to get the 22% increase, which they've had no increase in the last 5 years for the agencies on aging, and they wanted 44%, but they may be able to get 22%. They just said, please call your congressperson to try to get that because they want more money. So, that's all I had on that. And then I attended a meeting of the Council of Governments last week. And I'm sorry, I'm not, June 21st. The only thing there was, Mr. Greg Mapes from Isabella Bank presented on basically what treasurers do, I guess, or the finance director would do on managing township and municipal monies. It was really cool because he was talking about how they turf money over to different banks and they get equal deposits back, and they can get up $100 million protected by the by the FDIC, you know. So that's all I had.
Awesome, thank you. Trustee Brown? I don't have anything either, because EDA, of course, like Planning Commission, is covered by our director, so. Moving on, consent agenda, happy to entertain motions.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion by Cody, support by Smith, and I believe Trustee Therian had the warrants.
I did. There was just one check in question that's being looked at. Other than that, everything looked fine.
It was,
Well, it's got a check
wasn't in
number
there.
on it. So if there's not a check, it says transfer, but I don't know what that is. So.
it was the one to the county.
Is it on this report?
Yeah, it's on the list in there of all the checks that were there, but it wasn't in the file, or it wasn't in the bin, so.
I just didn't know what it was, so.
It's on this report?
It's on the printout
Oh, but it should be.
that we get in there, so
Yeah.
it should be on
This
here.
should be this,
It
right?
should be right here, the 24654 check number.
Page 17.
Oh, and it's not in the,
It's not in the basket is all,
Right.
so we're just gonna look and see.
that,
It could have been sent out, or,
yeah,
Yeah.
that check was written, it's on your report, $202 payable to the county register of deeds, maybe the county treasurer. And what that is for was to record the easement document that we executed between the property owners to the west of the jail property. And I wanted that recorded, so I had the check cut, and then the assessor took the easement document down, we got it recorded, and then that way we could get that back to the property owners. That's why that check's already out the door.
perfect.
So
Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Stuhldreher. I'm
Yeah.
satisfied then. Everything's good to go.
Yeah, I told him it was probably something like that, but I would confirm, so.
Nice to be able to get that now.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion further on that? All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to new business. Tonight is policy governance night. The first item being policy governance 2.5.10, cash flow ratio. And I realize my packet's a little messed up, so bear with me. There we go. Mr. Stuhldreher, do you have anything you'd like to add in introducing this?
Thank you. Just a little bit to brief the board. There's a report that begins on page 26 of your agenda packet. This is policy 2.5.10. This is a cash flow report that a couple years ago I think we used to review this more frequently. Now we moved it to annually because of our large cash balances, but it's fairly straightforward policy, and it indicates that the township shall not fail to maintain an adequate level of cash flow. We have monies that come in at different times of the year. It's not steady throughout the year. Our expenses are more predictable. They're more spread out over the balance of the year. So when we do have money, coming in. We have to make sure we hang on to it for future expenses. It's kind of analyzing and matching up the rate and the amount of revenue versus the rate of flow of the outgoing revenue. We look at 4 funds, 5 if technically, the general fund, the fire fund, and then both the east and the west DDA funds and the water and sewer funds. We have thresholds that are defined in policy 2.4.3 that help inform us as to what levels of cash flows should be maintained. For the general fund, it's 4 months of budgeted expenditures. For the fire fund, it's 3 quarterly payments to the city of Kalamazoo for the fire contract. City of Kalamazoo, city of Mount Pleasant, sorry. And the east and west DDA funds, 2 months of operating expenditures. And then the water and sewer funds, also 2 months of budgeted expenditures. We define cash flow or cash. We define cash as liquid cash reserves held by a bank or credit union that can be accessed and utilized on an as-needed basis. Usually it's going to be checking account balances, maybe savings account balances, and then to a certain extent, even certificates of deposits are liquid enough to be part of this definition. For the east and west DDA districts, they're primarily funded by cash increments that are or tax increments that are captured by the other taxing units. Those come into the Union Township, and then periodically we then transfer those over to the east and the west DDA funds, and that's their main source of operating cash and capital expenses. We do not include the project costs in this cash flow analysis because those are more one-time expenses, and we're primarily worried about making sure that the recurring operating expenses are payable when due. As it relates to the general fund, property taxes and state shared revenue are our primary sources of revenue. We get state shared revenue in every other month. Property taxes primarily one time a year, more towards the winter. So we feel we need a little bit more cash in the bank at any given point in time because of the unevenness of the receipt of revenue. As it relates to the water and sewer fund, we do quarterly billings. So we have a pretty good chunk of revenue coming in every quarter in the first 2 months of each quarter. So from that perspective, we think we only need 2 months of reserves at any point in time. If they're not kept in the form of cash, they may be in longer term investments that are a little harder to access without maybe taking a penalty of some sort. On page 27, we have the current cash balances, the amounts required for compliance, the numerical value of those descriptions I just provided. As you'll see, they're all in compliance. So I'm able to say that the administration's in compliance with this policy. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'm good.
I had one before you gave that explanation, but so I'm good.
Okay, good. That's the way it should work.
Pretty thorough.
Yeah. So nothing from this board on that. Policy Governance 2.7, end focus of grants and contracts. Mr. Stuhldreher, this is your wheelhouse again. Would you like to introduce?
Thank you. In that staff report You can find that on page 28 of your agenda packet. It's policy 2.7. This is an annual review that we do in June. The policy title is End Focus of Grants and Contracts. The policy wording, fairly short. Township manager may not enter into any grants or contractual agreements that fail to emphasize primarily the production of ends, and secondarily, the avoidance of unacceptable means. We did add a further sub-piece to that policy maybe 2 years ago or 3 now, and that has to do with making sure the Board of Trustees is aware of what grants are going to be applied for during the 2% grant time periods in the spring and the fall. And my interpretation of that grant is that, or that policy, is that we want to focus our grant applications and contractual agreements so that the money we're spending, the work that is being done as a result of those expenses are on point to accomplish, advance, whatever word you want to use, the ends that are contained in your governance policy document, being 1.0 through 1.6, and all the various sub-policies within that. There's data that I've provided that begins on page 28. You'll be very familiar with all these because, with few exceptions, the grants and the contracts end up coming before the Board of Trustees for approval, particularly if they're over $10,000. So you're aware of the various participation agreements that we execute with Isabella County Road Commission for the road projects. That's consistent with the end policies that are articulated here, 1.3.1, 1.3.4. This is a collaborative effort, which also speaks to Governance Policy 2.9. I'm not going to run through all of these. We did apply for and received reimbursement through a grant program from the state of Michigan. We have a little bit of state-owned property that's off the tax rolls. There's a process where we can apply for some funds to help provide the services that we provide to that state property. That was in the amount of $10,492. The state also has a program. I mentioned the tax increment finance, the tax increments in the review of the last policy, and that program creates a loss of personal property tax revenue for taxing units across the state. In an effort to try to, at the time they adopted the legislation, they're taking away taxing authority, taxing power, and then in exchange for that, they say, in order to make these local units of government whole, they'll have this other program and this other pot of money. And I'm not sure that it's a one-for-one trade, but nonetheless, we applied for and received $62,500 that went to, and I'm not sure what the exact amounts were, but it went as appropriate to both the East and the West DDA funds. The EDA itself is pretty active, and you'll see many items that we want to highlight on their behalf to help ensure you all that the EDA is, that what they do is also advancing your ends. And so we've talked about that in items A through E. A couple of the larger ones, $479,000 contract with Isabella Corp. To construct the sidewalks that were done last year along M20 between Lincoln and Bradley. Also, that went on Lincoln Street from the Lux Funeral Home up to the edge of our property here. Working with the county treasurer, you may recall that property was purchased by the EDA through the county's tax foreclosure. It's a blighted piece of property, cost $4,900. We spent $23,800 of EDA's money to remove that structure and get that dwelling off of the lot. And that kind of work, which is also part of EDA's mission, is to help stabilize neighborhoods. That particular piece of property was within the EDA district boundaries. As we've been working with MDOT on M20 Pickard, we had to remove all our light poles that were purchased with EDA funds years ago. And while removing those, they noticed, brought to our attention that the foundations on those light poles were in need of some work. So while it's exposed and all, we contracted with one of the contractors that's already kind of on site to rebuild, re-pour those foundations so that when the lights go back on, they have a good foundation to sit on. We did in 2022 receive $424,000 through the Saginaw Chippewa 2% grant program, and that was primarily to fund the Broomfield Road project between Lincoln and Crawford that came up kind of late in that project. Well, we thought while we had the crews out there that we ought to do that work then. And then also they provided some funding for Pump Station 1. You may recall that we used some of the ARPA monies, $228,000 in total last year for, again, to help fund Broomfield Road and the fitness project out here at McDonald Park. So we feel we're in compliance. There's other data that could be provided. If you're aware of anything where you think we haven't been in compliance, I would certainly like to know. If you have any questions about any of this, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
No?
All right, so report submitted when due.
Yes?
Yep. Manager's interpretations, did it lay that out?
Yes.
Yes, it did. Do you believe that the interpretation is justified, or there was explanation to make it reasonable?
Yes.
Yes. Do you feel the manager's interpretation addresses all aspects of the policy?
Yes.
And then compliance, do you feel there is data enough to show compliance with the policy?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So no issues here then?
No issues.
No.
I will just side comment. It was nice to see the EDA list here. I'm glad you included that. In the last EDA meeting, we got the annual report that has to be filed to the state of what the EDA has done in the previous year, was presented to the EDA board. And so going through that list was kind of fun, but it also began discussion of the various projects that are happening within the township. And what was very apparent to the EDA board is that we also partner with them. They help us, we help them. And so as Rodney started listing the projects that we contributed to in partnership with them, or we took on solely that advanced something in their districts that was beneficial to them, it was real apparent to me that there's hate to use the word synergy, but for the lack of a better term right now, it was nice to see that perspective. And I think it's not directly related to this other than its data supporting this. it's nice for us to see the EDA's work in front of us too. With that, we'll move on to policy governance 3.6, supervisor's role.
What about
Oh, 3.5.
I was just trying to jump the gun, huh?
Uh-huh.
Thank you for that. I didn't want to do 3.6 anyways. New business item 11C, policy governance 3.5, board, commission, and community linkage. This is more in our wheelhouse. So I'm assuming each of us has kind of read through this. We did make some updates to this section this last year. And so I guess just any general comments and we'll walk through the questions.
Sure. I would
Yeah.
like to touch base on this a little bit. I think we touched on it the last meeting a little bit about the linkage with the community. I think that's something we should strive for deeply in this, is the linkage with our constituents. I talked to some of the city officials, and I think I reported on that last meeting about what they're trying to do and thinking about doing. Just throwing it out there, I think it's a good idea that we do that, or something, or anything, or just talk about it.
I agree.
Yeah, and I certainly thought more about it since you brought that up this last time.
I personally think it would help us to get people interested in our boards. Some of the constituents that I talk to don't even realize some of the boards are out there, or what we're looking for, or people we're looking for when I get talking to them about being a board member. For one that we do have on the board, Eric Luce, when I was talking to him on a site, actually, construction site, and he's like, huh, really? Well, I think I'd be interested in that, and he's on the board today because of that, but I think it would be open maybe the eyes of the community a little bit more, what we have to offer and what we're looking for help on our boards also. So we're not struggling always to find them, just the trustees out being the salespeople for the board, but that's fine, but I think there might be an easier way to do that. That's it.
I liked it.
And probably in the near future, we might want to, depends on how it progresses, of adding the Mid-Michigan Aquatic Recreation Authority on that as one of the boards that is a linkage. So I don't know if we want to do it right now necessarily, as they're still trying to form, but it's something that we should probably keep in mind for the future.
Yeah, because at this point, probably next spring,
When they do it.
we'll know
Yeah.
what their life expectancy is.
Yeah, so maybe it's just something like, just kind of keep that in the back of everybody's head.
Yeah.
Right? That's
Great idea.
a good point.
Absolutely.
All right. So as you read through this, do you feel that this board, us, is in strict compliance with the policy as stated?
Yes?
Yes.
I would agree. There was one thing I wanted to lift up here, I think. Yeah, just a brief comment, and this actually comes from previous Trustee Hauk, pre-Trustee Hauk, I'm not sure what the proper title is anymore, Road Commissioner Hauk. One of the things he lifted up, and I just want to keep it in the forefront, is making sure when we talk about bordering local governments, we tend to interact a lot with the city, the tribe, the county. You know, Central's often involved in a lot of the interactions that this township has, and we tend to not always have the opportunity to talk to our neighboring townships as much. Now, we have opportunities like at Meridian Road. We've worked with Deerfield Township on joint projects. So I think it's that Council of Governments connection that Trustee Bills is taking good advantage of that provides those opportunities for that. So, just want to lift that up again.
I like to talk at those meetings.
Really?
Yes, sir.
So nobody indicated we were not strict compliance. Anything else? We talked about some possible improvements, not necessarily in process, but potentially in the language itself. But as far as the process goes, anything we should do to improve?
No, I like this.
We did talk about maybe before our next meeting of all our groups to start laying out, or talking about it more. See if it could be an agenda item for our ends focus.
What's on the agenda? What do you want?
For our, this is April, March, April
Yeah.
meeting that we have the joint boards where we need to direct better our expected outcomes from that meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Do you think that'll help in participation of that meeting also, if we can get on top of it
It
more
might.
up front?
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
If each respective board had, if we came up with something, if that particular board came up with something, kind of mentioned it at that point. I don't know.
It's a great meeting. It is. a
Even if
great
it's,
meeting.
even if it's one thing, hey, we as a board, we talked about ends in some way or shape or form.
And
This is what we think.
You and I could cover that through EDA and Planning Commission. Hopefully you're not on ZBA still.
I am right now. but-
ZBA might be a little tougher, they don't meet as often, and you certainly can handle sidewalks. That's a subcommittee of Planning Commission
Yeah.
anyways.
That could be the purpose for a meeting, though.
I like how
That's
they
the
do
only
the
thing on the
review of
agenda.
the year.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
I like how they do their year in review and kind of overview of everything that they've done. I mean, because you don't remember all of that stuff, at least I don't.
No, it's
So-
nice. I think what I've heard from this board in the past is it is really nice to get that year in review, but it's also nice to say what's the year coming up gonna look
Right.
like,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's what's kind of missed in some of these meetings in the past. It's easy to review,
Yeah.
harder to look forward.
Well,
And
I think
describe
that's
that.
what we do a lot too, is just review things that are put in front of us, and we don't really direct a lot of stuff as a board, in my opinion.
Well, hopefully that's what our ends accomplish too.
Well,
But yes.
that's right, the manager does a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did I ask the questions that y'all feel I should have asked? I went through them all.
Yeah,
I'm
we're good.
good.
Yep,
We're
good.
good.
Yep. We've been really waiting for 3.6, actually.
I know.
Yeah.
Moving on to 3.7.
3.6.
New business, item 11D, policy governance 3.6, supervisor's role in the board's process. I'm assuming again that everybody read through our policy, and then the write-up actually has a very short description of it, and then later the more complete policy. Any general comment there that? Do you believe we're in strict compliance with the policy as stated?
Yes.
Yes.
No, not strict compliance? Okay. How do you think the board can improve the process to be in full compliance? Let me just ask it this way then. Anything we should improve?
No, sir.
Anything else we need to discuss as far as these policies?
No.
No.
Not on my end.
If you'll give me the latitude, I realize this is section 3.6, this is board monitoring versus monitoring of the manager. There was one line in here that I wanted to ask. I was going to try to avoid commenting on my role here. Other than 3.6.2.2, you knew where I was going? Says, therefore, supervisor has no authority to supervise or direct the township manager. And I felt it was reasonable to ask our manager if you feel the supervisor is in compliance with that part of the policy, since it affects you.
I do. For the board's benefit, I think you know, there's a weekly meeting that's held with the manager, the treasurer, the clerk, and the supervisor. And that's, the intent of that is to talk about operations more. And when we're not able to hold those, and maybe often even if we do, there's another meeting on my calendar where the supervisor and I have a phone conversation prior to each board meeting. And those are open discussions, but there's never been anything where I felt he was asking me to do anything, direct me. He may inform me of a constituent issue, phone number, name, and then I take it from there. And on those rare occasions, and I can't think of a specific example, but I know there's been some where I felt that maybe it was getting close to that, then I mentioned it in the phone call, and you know, maybe you really need to bounce that off the board, you know, first, and something like that. So I think as it relates to this board, that relationship is very good.
Yeah, very happy to hear that.
All good?
All good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You realize I'm gonna do the same for the treasurer and clerk then, right? Giving our manager a heads up. That moves us to item 11D, 11E on our agenda. Policy Governance 3.7, duties of the elected department heads. In particular, this is really focusing at the treasurer and clerk. Again, I'm assuming you all read through the policy. So let me ask the question if you believe this board is in strict compliance with the policy.
I do.
Yep.
Yes, Clerk
Can I
Cody.
talk about it a little bit?
Yes,
You want me-
absolutely. My apologies.
Okay, so I'm kind of going with 3.7.1.3. So, department accomplishments. So I have meetings with the manager about things we're doing, things we need to do per each election, if I have enough workers, if I train the workers. He does send me a checklist before each election that I fill out and send back and ask me if I have or need anything. So I meet with him before every election a few times. The only thing that I haven't been able to meet about that I want to talk about, but I can't because we don't have any, the laws aren't all complete yet. So that's the big one that we're just waiting on. Yeah, so I think, I believe that we're in compliance with it.
Thank you. I didn't ask a question yet, though, of everybody else. Are we in strict compliance, do you feel?
Do.
So this might be better asked. There's two perspectives here. It's the two that this is focusing on, two department heads, and then the rest of us. Do you think we could improve in the process to be fully in compliance? Anything to improve upon?
I don't think so.
Well, since we think we're in compliance, I think, no,
We could always be better, though, right?
I don't know.
And then, anything else we need to discuss in order to live by the policies more completely? I'll ask one question kind of related to that. Maybe it's more of a comment. Just a reminder as we go through our policy governance, this is our opportunity to really evaluate, is it correct today? So for me, a lot of this language, in particular with the stuff we saw with 3.6 and 3.7, these last two sections, hasn't really changed much in the last many years. I'm sure it has changed some, but I always want to make sure we're looking at it to make sure it's relevant to today, that we're updating it if needed. There's my comment.
All right, thank you.
That moves us to extended public comment. Extended public comment is restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. If you choose to address the public, please state your name and address for the record. And with that, we'll open up extended public comment at 8:04 p.m. Seeing no one here in person, no one connected remotely, we'll close extended public comment at 8:04 p.m. That takes us to item 13 on the agenda, manager's comments.
Thank you, and I do have just a couple. Mr. McBride mentioned the rural readiness grant that we had to write up, and Mr. Nanny did this. We wrote up, I'll call it a pre-application statement or a notice of intent, if you will. and that was, as indicated, looked on favorably. The Rodney and the Vice President of MMDC are meeting later this week to begin looking at the specifics of the policy itself. And so we're hopeful that we'll get some money through there. Mr. Nanny already mentioned the fitness court. I was going to provide an update on that. I do plan on having at the second meeting in July an action item for the board where you can do your, a little bit of luck, your final review of your ends that you've been working on and approve those. So that's coming up. And we're continuing work on the citizen survey. We've met twice with Mary Center from CMU, and we're now, shortly, we should be receiving a service agreement that will come before the board for approval. And then there'll be at least one, assuming that's approved, there'll be at least one meeting where she comes in and have an opportunity for you to comment on the draft of the questions and add, remove. So you'll have an opportunity for input there. Our goal is that that survey go out in September after summer is over. We are working towards having another leadership luncheon in 2023. That would be in the fall. That's where you're all invited, along with county, city elected officials, tribal members, leaders on their council. For an annual lunch, many of you have attended one or more of those in the past. I think it's quite enjoyable. I am out of the office next week. Rodney is the acting township manager. And then lastly, I'd like to get, I guess, approval or a nod. I'd like to conduct some active shooter training here at the township, and been talking with the county sheriff. He has a couple programs. One is more PowerPoint focused. The other is more interactive, real time, real life type of thing. In order to do that latter one, I think I'd need to close the township hall for a couple hours one afternoon. And so I'm interested in how the board would feel about that. We'd schedule it well in advance so we can notice the public. And I see that version of training being held for the folks that work here in Township Hall. And then we'll also conduct the PowerPoint version for the other folks that are more public service centric out in the field. They don't interact as much with the public. So I think we could conduct training for them. It's more textbook, if you will, teacher or student type of thing. So I didn't know what your thoughts about closing the township hall, maybe 2 o'clock some afternoon.
Yeah.
I'm good
I
with
think
it.
I
that's
think
great.
that's the only way to
Great.
do it is the interactive
Yeah.
with the township
Yeah.
staff, because that's hands-on. That's what you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I
think it's a great
think
idea.
anything to do with safety with
Yeah.
with the employees, shut down the township for a week if it needs to be.
Yeah, right?
But if it's gonna
Yeah.
save lives and it's gonna
Yeah,
help Tara, she's sitting at that front window. Yes, absolutely. I say 100%.
I appreciate that. I think it'll only take 2.5 hours. Give you plenty of notice, give the public plenty of notice. So if we close at 2 some afternoon for the day, we're talking 2.5 hours.
Yep.
I think we'd be able to accomplish a lot.
oh, yeah.
And it's not like we don't have the drop box for people to put their stuff in if they need
Yeah.
it. So
Would it be something that you could let us know when it's gonna happen?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
I mean, would that be something that if we were able to, could
Okay.
show up?
Either one, either version. I'll let you know about both of them.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, that's all I have.
Any
Awesome.
questions for any of that?
I wasn't clear on when the lady from CMU was gonna come with the survey questions. Was that the meeting in July as well?
The lady in the center from CMU, I'm hoping that at the second meeting in July, you'll be able to consider the service agreement.
Thank you. Oh, I see. Oh,
Contract
I see.
that will spell out what we're doing, how much it's gonna cost.
Okay.
And then, if that's approved, then she'd be coming in here. We've met with her twice, we've talked about the survey process. In the second meeting, we began to talk about the content questions that we think ought to be in the document. So there'll be something, it won't just be a blank piece of paper when she comes to the board, and then you will have final say on that
Great.
document that goes out.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So for the questions, obviously, there's multiple needs here. Administration has your needs. Just the public services side of that. I mean, obviously, water and sewer, we want to be able to ask our constituents about. Is the planning commission, will they have an opportunity to give input then as well? Is that the intent?
Yes, and she's gonna meet with them as well.
Okay, great.
We're trying to do three broad things. One is capture what you seven are interested in. And then we're also, since we're updating our master plan this year, we're gonna use that opportunity to solicit input, kind of focused in that area. And then we're also updating the recreation master plan. So there's gonna be some focus in that area within the survey as well.
Can I ask you one question about the recreation master plan? That's done by planning, right? And so, if the public wants to put input on that, can they go to the meeting?
Oh, yeah.
When they're just talking?
Yeah, that would be an agenda item, it would be posted, and that survey won't be the only form of soliciting public input for either of those, the master plan or I'll call it the land use master plan or the recreation
Okay,
master plan.
okay, because I had some inquiries on that. Some people want to know if they could go to the meeting, and I said, well, I think it's an open meeting, pretty sure it's open
Yep.
meeting.
I would suggest, I mean, if they have comments they want to give now, they can go to the planning commission and during public comment, say, I know you're working on this, may not be on your
Just
agenda tonight,
Even if
anytime.
it's not on the agenda.
But with the, and only since I've been through this, like the master plan has to have a series, I don't want to get it wrong, at least one, I believe it's a series of public events that have to be held by state law.
Oh,
So
All right.
it's supposed to be a very public process.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
So the survey is just one of, I'll say several forms of outreach
Awesome.
to the public.
Thanks.
But I would bet the planning commission would love for people to give
I know they
their
would.
thoughts. Yeah.
I know they would.
Is that bad to speak on your behalf?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Manager. That'll take us to item 14 on the agenda, final board member comment. Trustee Brown?
Sure, just one thing. I appreciate the manager and the staff's updates on our road construction, especially Pickard Road. I found out constituents want to know what's going on a lot in road construction when we use up their time in the evening on the way home and on their way to work. So I appreciate that. I was able to use your updates quite a few times, and so thank you for those. I appreciate them. That's it.
Trustee Bills?
I would like to thank the rain gods for the rain, for what's left of the crops. And I see that some corn is growing, so I'm excited about that. That's about it.
Amen.
Nothing.
Treasurer Rice?
I'm good.
Clerk Cody? Trustee Therian?
I'm good, thank you.
Real brief. Just had some recent contacts just in public, and it happened to be just happenstance, a few people that serve on our boards. And I really try to stay out of, as we all should, stay out of the planning commission's business, stay out of the ZBA's business, et cetera, right? We don't want to put our thumbs on the scale of these other public boards. So because that purposely happens, the only time I really reach out to typically individuals of these groups is if there's something going on that needs attention, right? Not a specific applicant kind of thing. So anyways, I happen to have 3 contacts in the last 2 weeks from board members, just ran into them. And I just had the opportunity to ask them how they're enjoying serving on planning commission or ZBA. And the feedback I got was just, it was thrilling. It was all positive. And so it's great to hear that. And I think they feel like they're a part of something, that they're heard. And that's awesome. And so I think back to your point a little bit, what you talked about, that there's probably a lot of people in our community that would find that rewarding. So that's my.
I'm sorry, if I could just,
Yeah.
could I piggyback on? And I think with the people you've just talked about there, if we do something, it'd be great to have those boards maybe involved if they wanted to be, so they can speak to the relationship with that board, with the constituents that may come to a table or a fair or whatever we do or ever do, something like that. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I really do.
Ooh, that's a good
Great.
idea.
Yeah. And with that, our business is done.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Any discussion? Yeah. Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Yes.
All in favor of the motion to adjourn? Say
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Happy Fourth,
Soaring-
everybody.
Soaring Eagles.